episode of Us Anxious Folk. My name is Lauren, I am your host, and it's once again been quite a while since I've done an episode. It seems like that's my MO these days. The title of this episode is Falling Down and Getting Back Up Again, and so I think it's pretty clear from that I've had a hard time lately. I had a bit of a dip in my mental health again, which is part of the reason that I haven't posted in such a long time. I honestly just lost motivation for it, and I don't know, it's been a tough couple of months. Back in February, I think the last time I recorded was maybe late Jan. Back in February, I went overseas with my family, went on our first cruise, which was really fun. I really enjoyed it, had a great time. Back when I was housebound with agoraphobia, my parents used to go on cruises a lot, and I always had a sneaking suspicion that it would be like the perfect holiday for someone who suffered with agoraphobia, because it was like, once you're on the boat, you're on the boat. You know what I mean? Like, I think for a lot of people, they would think that getting on a cruise is like really, like the idea of being on a cruise ship and being away from land would be really overwhelming for someone with agoraphobia. But in my head, it was like, well, it's not like a holiday where I'm traveling around. I'm in like one place the whole time, pretty much. And so I always kind of thought like, I'll probably really like it. And even though, I'm not housebound anymore, I still thoroughly enjoyed being in the one spot the whole time, and like the ship was big enough for me to not get bored. It was really fun. We went to New Zealand. It was mad. Big shout out to M. Hanley, who has always been a firm advocate for cruises since I've followed her on Instagram. So I had that in February. Also, at the beginning of this year, lost my little friend Pig, my little dog who had been by my side for the last 11 years. And he'd been with me for the whole housebound journey, the whole recovery journey, the whole thing. And losing him was so hard, and I'm still grieving that. And I still, I feel like I'm only just getting to a stage where I can think about him and not cry. But I have like his photo right next to me all the time. I've got his face on a little bracelet, which is beautiful. And yeah, that was rough. So I kind of knew that mentally I was gonna have a hard time dealing with that grief. And that's expected and that's normal. But I also went through some things in my personal life that kind of I also knew were going to kick things off in my like emotional, mental health sort of side, which, yeah. Suffice to say that panic attacks became like a pretty constant thing that I was dealing with. And I mean, that's not necessarily new. Like, I'm pretty used to dealing with panic attacks for the most part. But what floored me the most was the sense of hopelessness that came alongside panic. It was that feeling of, I don't want to keep doing this. Like, I don't want to keep doing this dance of like feeling better for a little bit and then getting bad again, and then feeling better for a little bit and then getting bad again. And I think when you are somebody who has like really struggled with your mental health to the degree where you've, been housebound for a while, or you've really kind of had a hit to your life in a big way, like you've been impacted, I guess it was what I was trying to say with that, by challenging mental health, then when it comes around again and when it happens repeatedly, you get a little more tired each time. And I think that is what kind of started to really get to me. And the one difference this time was that usually when I have a hard time with my mental health, I really struggle to function in all areas. Whereas this time I managed to keep a lot of plates spinning in the air. So I was still managing to work, I was still managing to parent and cook and clean and do all those kind of things. And I don't know if that is because I just have more responsibilities these days, and I, felt like the weight of having to keep all that afloat, like feeling like I didn't have a choice. Or if it kind of speaks to the compartmentalising that I do these days. It's kind of like when I, had one child and one very young child, it kind of felt like my mental health was tied to every area. Whereas now that I've been a parent for 9 years now, and have 2 kids, it's sort of like I'm able to kind of section off the different parts of my life. I was like wearing my mum hat, and I was able to wear my mum and housewife hat, but my Lauren hat was just like it had toppled off. Like I was not keeping me afloat. And yeah, and then I kind of really felt overwhelmed by I guess the weight of my own expectations, the weight of feeling like I have to post something, the weight of feeling like I didn't want to say that I was struggling, because not only did I want people in my personal life to be like, hey, are you okay? Which sounds really shit, like why would you not want people to reach out when you're feeling low? But when things are getting really dark for me, I seem to want to keep up the facade that I'm okay desperately. Like I don't want people to know that I'm struggling, because I don't want the extra pressure of them wanting me to feel better. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know consciously I want my friends to be there for me, and I know consciously as well that it's okay to talk about times when you're struggling, and it's those times when you most need to talk about what you're going through. But still, each time that it happens, I tend to close off. Because in a lot of ways it feels like the same old story that I'm trotting out each time. And part of me, there's like a little voice that goes, don't you think the people around you are sick of hearing this? Like, we've been through this so many times, this is so old, this is so boring. Like, yeah. And honestly, it pains me to be upfront about that and to say those things, because consciously I know that that it's okay to be going through the same thing again and again. That's a lot of the human experience. But yeah, I fell I fell a lot in the last couple of months, and I just needed time to regroup. And so what I did, if anyone's interested, I mean, really the only thing that I know helps for sure is time. I know that when I'm going through a dark spot, that there are little things that I can do to help, and sometimes those little things are everything. But I also know that sometimes I just need time. Like I just need to sit in my own bullshit for a little bit, and I just need some days and nights to pass so that, my brain has time to process and my body has time to feel, and I have then, a few weeks where I'll feel shit and I'll feel, dark and hopeless. And then one morning I'll wake up and, the sunrise will seem really beautiful. And that's when I'll know, like, okay, I'm like coming out the other side of this. But there were little things that I did that I guess I know to do these days. Like little safeguards that I put in place. And the first one was putting my hand up for therapy again. It is really hard to get help in a timely fashion when you need it. Can I just say, I went through a lot of different preliminary phone calls with different therapists, like trying to find one who had availability and who wasn't like going to cost an exorbitant amount that I can't afford. So that was a bit of a stumbling block, but I got there in the end. Booked in with a therapist. My first appointment with her is next week, so that's exciting. And what else did I do? At first I was grasping at everything. Like I was like, I've got to do yin classes, I've got to get back to journaling, I've got to get back to meditating, I've got to get back to stretching my body all the time and doing walks and like doing this and that. And I was really like just searching for ways to feel better. And every time I wasn't feeling better, I was getting more disheartened. And so I kind of just had this point where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to not do anything. I've reached out for help. So I know I've like ticked off that box. Like I have professional help if I need it. But I'm also just going to do the very, very basics. And so that meant like making sure I was getting sleep, making sure that I was spending time, like very like low sensory time, like being under a blanket, being warm, reading a book, just making sure that I had some quiet time and some space. Borrowed a lot of really good books from the library, got really just heavily into reading for a little while. And I didn't really do any yin. I didn't really do any like exercise really. I just went back to very small meditation sessions. And during these meditation sessions, it was like 5 minutes if I could manage it, 10 minutes if I was, really feeling good about it. I would sit down in like a dark corner of the house with my dressing gown on, making sure I was all warm. This would be at night when everyone was in bed. I would sit down and I would just close my eyes and I would just focus on the inhale and the exhale. And I would say, as I was inhaling, inhale. And then I would say, as I was exhaling, exhale. And every time my mind, like I realized I was thinking something, I would just come back to saying inhale and exhale. And some days it was like I would have to come back to that inhale and exhale repeatedly because my mind would just keep going off. Other days I would find that I had just not much happening in my head at all. And the thing that I really noticed was that giving myself that space just to notice my breathing, I suddenly craved having that empty space of just, I don't need to do anything in this moment. I just need to sit here. And after a few weeks of doing that, I actually started to notice in my like day-to-day life where I suddenly had more mental space, which was amazing. And I also noticed that I was becoming a lot more present. And I know that sounds really like cliche and really like the best way I could explain it is that I would feel myself spiraling into a panic, say at work or something, and I would have enough space to think in my head, what's actually happening right now? Like what's happening in this exact moment? You're sitting on your work chair, you're at work, like your kids are at school or at daycare, your partner's at work, you've got people around you, like you're actually okay right now, even though you're sort of mentally spiraling. Your parents are alive, they're healthy, like just like your friends are healthy and happy, and just I would really think in that moment like everything is actually okay right now. And I've never had the space before to really notice that. So that was really, really helpful. And the other thing that I did, which kind of is probably not as related in terms of like panic and depression, but my IBS during this time was flaring very, very badly. I actually took myself to emergency one day because it was that painful and I was that tired of not knowing what the fuck was happening. Because I guess the thing with IBS is it's like, you know, you can be in so much pain and it's like, well, it's just IBS. And it's like, but what do I do about that? Like that doesn't help me. So I really pared back my like eating habits. I started eating like really like basic things. So like green beans and rice and chicken and like warm things. Cups of tea, like with no caffeine. I cut out coffee for a little while. I just really like, I guess just brought everything back to the bare minimum. And honestly, it was so helpful. And like I said, I started to notice that like sunrises and things became really beautiful again. And then I was like, okay, I'm turning a corner. I'm coming back. Something that I noticed about that time though was the disparity between when I am really low and when I'm okay. Because when I'm really low, I'm having thoughts about like not wanting to be here anymore. And when I'm okay, I'm so happy to just feel okay that I'm thinking like it's so good to be alive right now. And I said it to my partner one day, like, geez, this morning I just was walking to work thinking like, what a day to be alive. And he's like, yesterday you were literally saying that, you are so tired of being alive. And I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny, but it pointed out to me the real contrast between the emotions that I go through when I'm having a dip in my mental health. And I was reading this beautiful book, which if you're a reader, I highly recommend. It's called Go as a River. It's one of the best books I've read in a while. But I wanted to read out a little passage because there was something that just so beautifully like explained what it is that I think we really go through when we deal with anxiety. Okay, so she says, I had also faltered and fallen, lost my resolve, and curled into fear more times than I could count. Strength, I had learned, was like this lidded forest floor, built of small triumphs and infinite blunders, sunny hours followed by sudden storms that tore it all down. We are one and all alike, if for no other reason than the excruciating and beautiful way we grow piece by unpredictable piece, falling, pushing from the debris, rising again, and hoping for the best. And then the other bit I wanted to read as well. Flowing forward against obstacle was not my whole story. For, like the river, I had also gathered along the way all the tiny pieces connecting me to everything else, and doing this had delivered me here, with 2 fists of forest soil in my palms, and a heart still learning to be unafraid of itself. I read that and I was like, yes, still learning to be unafraid of myself. I think that pretty much sums up the last couple of months for me, and I know that's going to be something that I'm doing for the rest of my life, I think. Still learning to be unafraid of myself, still learning to love myself, still learning to be okay with showing up and being honest about what I'm feeling, which feels like it shouldn't be as hard as it is. And I want you to know I'm doing that with this episode because I've had such resistance to filming an episode because it's been so long. And I'm like, if I'm gonna, do another episode, I want it to at least be a good one. And because I've been so just creatively empty lately, I haven't had much to say besides I've been through some shit personally and I'm trying to make my way back. And then I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do an episode on that. Yeah, I'm just gonna show up exactly how I'm feeling, because I'm pretty sure that you guys don't expect me to be any other way, and I'm very grateful for that. So I'm not going to make any promises moving forward. There are huge parts of me that are really excited for the things that are coming up, but I'm learning how to balance everything, and I'm not putting a huge amount of pressure on myself to, meet episode requirements and schedule interviews and ideally I'd love to do all of that, but I'm just going easy for the time being, and I'm recognizing that this is a season in my life, and like all seasons, it's going to morph and change into a more productive season of growth. But right now it's just like my own personal autumn where things have been dying and falling off the tree and ready to kind of prep the floor for the new growth. But yeah, I hope you are all doing well. I hope you're all feeling okay. If you're not, or even if you are, I'm sending you my love and support, and take care, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Us Anxious Folk podcast, the podcast for the chronically overwhelmed, perpetually panicked, anxious folk in all of us. If you would like to find more about me, you can find me on YouTube at Lauren Rose or on Instagram at LaurenR_Rose.